Hi, everyone. It's really bright up here. I'm humbled to be here amongst so many amazing, inspiring people. Thanks to Gina and the entire producer team. Please give it up for Gina. She's running around like crazy. So thanks to this very conference, the Design Systems Slack, and an increasing number of on and offline resources, many of us are great at building and socializing design systems. We understand the importance of aligning on tools, and we're great at iterating, but how many of us are paying the same attention to ourselves, to our coworkers, the configuration of teams, and how decisions are made? Today I'm excited to share with you a 1.0 of the people layer. It's a topic I've been interested in throughout my career, and I'm still defining. I'll point out signals I'm seeing, the dots I'm connecting, societally and personally. I'll test a few hypotheses with you, and then I'll suggest questions you can ask yourself about working at the people layer. I'm interested in actively engaging with all of this as the design problem I'm solving for. So the people layer is the deepest, most complex layer of any organization, not just in tech companies. It's broader than content, message, and business purpose. It's a layer of interaction that persists beyond changes in aesthetics, code, UX, UI, operating systems, devices, code stacks, tools, and trends. That's the money shot, by the way. All the slides went into that. It's independent of any one individual, and by default, everyone you work with is involved. Everyone can solve for it. Let's start with external and societal signals in design and tech. As early as 2015, Beth Dean, a content strategist and designer at Facebook, first noticed on Medium, we don't stop being human when we go online. There's a desire to relate to software as we relate to other living, breathing things. Laurie Voss tweeted this summer that every tech problem is a people problem. 3 weeks ago, I attended the first Design Ops Summit in New York, convened by Rosenfeld Media. In attendance were many of you, CEOs, VPs of design, VPs of UX, design producers, researchers, strategists, and other development and design ops professionals. We shared our perspectives and approaches from within our organizations about designing design systems and the people who manage them. One of the many things I loved about it was Louis Rosenfeld's introductory remarks reflected here. We're still defining this. It's an emergent practice. To me, the summit was a powerful signal that we've reached critical mass of addressing people in tech. Nearly every presentation had something to do with people. Here we see Kristen Skinner prioritizing the organization's shape. The structure of teams and your org chart is the way great design is delivered. And she should know, she's the co-author of the groundbreaking org design for design orgs. I recommend it if you haven't read it. Finally, this tweet from Bo Ren is from just a few weeks ago. In Silicon Valley, I used to think that being too human was a weakness, too empathetic, too emotional, too vulnerable, too feminine. Now I wear human as a badge of honor. These qualities, empathy, emotionality, and vulnerability, I argue, are genderless. And I love that Bo refers to this as a layer. The last sentence, the future lies in humanists building a human layer on top of technology. As I'm suggesting today, it's the root layer. Let's look at societal signals that are happening right now, even today. But before I go on to this section, a caveat. The opinions expressed in this section are mine and not the views of my employer. We have reached peak bro. Society is visibly reacting to toxic masculinity. On the left, we have James Damore, the ex-Google employee, who wrote an internal memo suggesting that biological differences between the sexes could explain the gender gap in tech. And on the right, I love that his last name is pronounced Kalanick. Travis Kalanick, the ex-Uber CEO, quoting Mike Isaac, the New York Times reporter, His drive to win in life has led to a pattern of risk-taking that has at times put his ride-hailing company on the brink of implosion. We have reached peak asshole leader. One upshot from the current administration is the visibility of resistance movements. Occupy, Black Lives Matter, Pussy Hats, and Nasty Women are just a few. The search term resists peaked during inauguration weekend. So far. Almost as a reminder, Everlane has a 100% human t-shirt. Their 100% human collection supports two things that matter to them: protecting human rights and remembering that the more we are the same, remembering that we are more the same than we are different. For every 100% human pride product sold, they donate to the HRC. All of these are signals that societal values have been pushed to their limits and that we're in the midst of a cultural reset. Political turmoil has incited people to action, to get off their couches, to knit, to make signs, and to try their hand at expressing themselves, even if it's ironic. All this motivation and visibility is good, and there's a lot more than what I'm covering here. So now let's switch to personal signals. As soon as I graduated college, I joined AIGA. When I was 23, I moved to Boston and joined that chapter. Its network was the key to my getting jobs in-house at small agencies and small studios. All of these were models, all those businesses were models for how to configure people to solve problems and to scale, or how not to scale. As the oldest and largest network of designers, AIGA continues to open many doors for me. I've met a lot of my heroes, the people who inspire me to this day. Over the course of my 23-year membership, with a few years leading the Rhode Island chapter, I've seen its network effects tenfold. The more I give to AIGA, the more I get back. When I was 24, I founded my first company, Schwa Design. I ran it for 18 years. Its origin story is a story of referrals and the importance of one person's influence. So I was working in-house at Houghton Mifflin Company, freelancing nights and weekends, and did a small brochure for a company then called IS Robotics. Now they're called iRobot. I had no idea that they were a spin-off from the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. And so one day I got a call at my desk from the assistant to the director, Rod Brooks. The AI lab needed a rebrand. Was I interested? And I was like, holy shit, yep, I am. And if I don't start my own business, then when am I going to do it? So that was 97, and I learned a lot about running a business from being in business. Schwa is a holacratic networked model of designers, strategists, writers, developers, illustrators, photographers, typographers, and project managers. Sometimes we were 2 people, sometimes we were 25. Everyone was independent, and that relied on me empowering one-on-one relationships and teams. Some client relationships spanned 7 years, during which we rebranded the same client twice. To this day, I'm still seeing the network effects of that model, where another client has come back for a rebrand 7 years later. I've taught design for 2 decades. It started in 1998 at Mass Art. Since then, I've taught, critiqued, and guest lectured at Art Institute of Boston, RISD here in California at CCA, and General Assembly here in SF. For me, teaching is all about individual growth. One of my former students asked me to advise a startup where he's the sole designer, and I'm happy to do that. I love how General Assembly has productized teaching the fundamentals of visual design, UX, and a lot more. Startnership was my second business, and essentially Startnership's goal is to productize the design needs of startups. In other words, at each phase of a startup's growth, you can predict what the design and communications needs will be. If you fit those deliverables into a workshop, tailor the agenda to the business's needs, and boom, you have a repeatable pattern. One of our first clients was a startup named Logobase. Here, one of the co-founders is doing a card sorting exercise for the company's content strategy and key messages, the other co-founder took this picture. This activity happened 6 months into their business. They were trying to raise funds without knowing how to market themselves or tell their story. The co-founder who took this picture is based in Providence, Rhode Island, where I used to live. The other co-founder who's doing the card sorting was based in Boston, and it took me, a content strategist who's far left, Margot Bloomstein, John Curran, who's in this audience, to fly back to Providence to have the fundamental conversations that the two co-founders had skipped over. With designers in the room, this taught me how to agree on a tight agenda, prepare for focus work time, and take very small steps together. For 9 months, I was a part of a startup inside IBM called the Bluemix Garage, and I didn't know, Una and Mina, that you both went through IBM as well. I was part of a small team of global designers who conducted workshops across the globe for startups and Fortune 500s, including Wells Fargo and UBS. From this experience, I learned how to customize a curriculum to a particular market. And now I work at Twitter. I'm the first design producer in the product team. It was a new role for the organization when I joined in August 2016. I'm grateful my role was created because we really needed help with consistency. One of my first projects was to help launch our product design system, Horizon. I helped to facilitate the naming, branding, and in collaboration with the Horizon team in the third row, we oriented the rest of the product design team to its use in a series of classes, and that work is always ongoing. Throughout this year, I've been hosting and producing our weekly product critiques. It's where designers come to share work in progress and receive feedback to advance their projects. I think about crits as a transportable and learning environment. There are lots of variables to refine with critique, including presenting your work, giving feedback, receiving feedback, acting on feedback, learning, listening, talking, which is different from being heard, facilitation, documentation, collaboration, team configuration, the list goes on. I'm really curious about marrying stages of work to feedback so we can set expectations around process. I'm also thinking about pastries as a variable, coordinated based on who's in the room and who's coming. Some of our events are cross-team. This is a lunch and learn with Andrew Lightheart about presenting your work. Andrew is a terrific advisor. I highly recommend you reach out to him. He's on Twitter at @Lightheart. He helped me prepare for this presentation, and he's a great guy. We've hosted events with the SF Design Systems Coalition, and we've hosted 2 visits from the General Assembly UX class. Launched yesterday, here's a behind-the-scenes look of the video that some of my team was profiled for the Design Systems Handbook on designbetter.co. Thanks, InVision. So I wear a lot of hats at Twitter. Working at Twitter can be a lot like using Twitter. It's about what's happening all over the world, now, 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 and now. We ship and celebrate what we've shipped every week. We are a highly experiment-driven culture, always tinkering and improving. Right now, there are probably 1,000 versions of the product based on what OS and device you have, what version of the app you're running, your behaviors, our feature experiments, our A/B tests, and the algorithms that serve you content. If that sounds frenetic, it can be. Although the now is exciting, maybe because I'm a little older than most of my team and my managers, I'm fond of things that persist. So this is where it all intersects. I've always been a fan of beautiful aesthetics and functional decisions, but I'm way more interested in why decisions were made and the environment for making them. Whereas Twitter is highly experiment-driven with product, I'm looking to experiment with process and to establish a process. And that takes time, cross-functional team building, leadership buy-in, socialization, commitment, and patience. And to get more personal, I'm always happy to build bridges between and across teams, but also within teams. A few weeks ago, a designer on the marketing team asked me if I knew anyone who would be able to come in and give a basics of UX lesson to the rest of his team. I referred him to someone else on his team because I knew that this person had experience he was looking for. So although I'm happy to make connections like that, it's always been my experience to think and work horizontally. I continue to strive for interpersonal connectivity and to look for operational efficiency, and that is absolutely a people problem. So, these questions can help you diagnose and identify problems at the people layer. Maybe you haven't noticed or considered these before, but once you do, you'll be a more empathic person, better collaborator, and you will learn skills that ground you. These skills will persist. If you're working inside a product that's past its seed stage, chances are the company has separate content strategy, research, product, brand, sales, marketing, engineering teams, or however you guys configure. Look at how these teams collaborate. If you can, find out what the relationship is like between them. Find out from which teams certain projects originate and how projects flow. Is engineering involved at the start? Is brand left to polish something at the end? If it's more inclusive, you'll get better results with multiple teams involved from the start. The past and the future are horizontal. Behind the org chart, how do teams work together? Do they share their roadmaps and strategies not only vertically within the team, but across teams? Do you feel like everyone is working towards a common goal? Chances are different teams make decisions differently, but what would you do if you knew how and when teams decided on something, large or small? Some decisions you make may have effects beyond the meeting, the week, the month, the quarter, or the company. How might you go about your days differently, as well as your months and quarters, if you had both qualitative and quantitative criteria for your role? Before you begin a new project, is the team that's going to kick it off multidisciplinary? If it is, are all lines of business in the room? Do you know how the people on the project were elected to work on it and why? When the project kicks off, are the appropriate people in the room? Is there a working agreement, delineating roles, responsibilities, and more? For example, what tools will you use to get this particular job done? What's the frequency and cadence of meetings? This is one of my favorites. For each meeting, are the appropriate people in the room? If not, has someone elected to follow up with them? Should the meeting still take place if all participants, and not just key decision makers, are not available? This is a Google Calendar plugin that I'd love to see shipped. It's not available yet, but it essentially calculates the value of the meeting based on billing rates of people in the room. If you're jumping into a project midstream or welcoming in a new team member to a project, is there a brief you can read up on? And has someone been able to answer your questions about it? Has the meeting agenda been socialized with enough time for input? During a meeting, are the loud voices in the room overtaking quieter ones? Could a facilitator help and ensure that all perspectives are heard? Yesterday, Cameron spoke about the importance of room dynamics and facilitators. Perhaps you might use a protocol to ensure inclusivity, such as a talking stick. What's the culture of giving and receiving feedback? Is it published, and is it visible? To me, feedback is a gift, and this is how we do it in our crit space. It's a little cut off, but this is how we set expectations around giving and receiving feedback in product at Twitter. People who believe their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. They tend to achieve more than those who believe their talents are innate gifts. I like to say, then in a context of learning, in other words, having a growth mindset, you can never be wrong. I'm sure you've all heard someone say, this is on brand or this is not on brand, but do you understand what that means? Is there a common vocabulary you can reference? Are there other words or terms that are bandied about that might be new to you, or is it an acronym that you've never heard before? Might it feel more inclusive to pause and ask for a quick definition? Or would a glossary help? Some of the most common mistakes of this nature are when someone says, "of course," and "obviously." What's obvious to you might not be obvious to someone else. So here's the list of assessment, and then we're going to move into putting those ideas into practice. Each of these suggestions can be a nicety, but collectively they can influence your performance, optimize your team, and ultimately be catalysts for evolving a company. Ask yourself, under which conditions do you do your best work? Are you a morning person like me who has peak energy between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m.? Or do you prefer strategy kickoffs at 4 o'clock on a Friday? Probably not. If you need heads down uninterrupted time, does it take blocking off chunks of time on your calendar like a good VP cap to get the work done? Or could you indicate it physically, such as putting headphones on? Find this out for yourself and your team. How would your collaboration change if you knew this about your coworkers? What if you had this data for your entire company and published it on an internal site? This is from CassieRobinson.work. The title's cut off, but it says User Manual for Me. If you go to CassieRobinson.work, she's open sourced the tool that helps you think through these performance metrics for yourself. I'm sure you've been in a state of flow where you're in a zone and you're getting great work done, only to be interrupted by a text or by a tap on the shoulder. There are myriad ways to be communicated with, but I'd love to work on a tool to help coworkers state their preferences. Email, Slack, OpenDMs, HipChat, GChat, phone call, text, Hangouts, Skype. The list goes on and will continue to grow. But if you knew someone's channel preferences, that means the message you send will be a message that's welcomed. If you're planning a workshop or extended focus time, account for frequent breaks, food, snacks, lighting, fresh air. These all add up to a comfortable work environment. Nothing's worse than sitting in a meeting for hours on end with no clue about the next breather. These variables will differ across teams, but it's critical to set the stage for optimal performance. Think back to your first days at your company. The excitement, the eagerness, the orientation to culture, core values, introductions, and likely the swag. What happened immediately after? Was it clear what you were supposed to work on first and how to prioritize the likely long list of things to tackle after that? If you had an onboarding buddy, how long did that last? Who paired you? Were you pointed to a series of documents to read solo and make sense of in aggregate? How quickly did you feel like you were a part of the team? There's a tremendous opportunity for concierge-level flow for employee onboarding and offboarding. Deeper than an onboarding buddy, is there a mentoring program in your org, and what's the cadence of matchmaking? Being a mentor means your acquired experience is highly valuable to someone else. Being mentored helps develop confidence and leadership skills and brings new thinking to the team. The right pairing can be a catalyst for personal bonds beyond the workplace. Beyond alignment on design tools in your design system, are there principles that govern your team's decisions? When were they last updated, and how were they authored? Knowing how a set of principles shapes your work can remove decision by influence, ego, or committee. Cultural and team activities can go a long way to build camaraderie and open up non-work channels of socialization. From elaborate schemes for offsites and day trips to simpler small team, one-on-one grabbing of a beverage of choice can help build relationships. These are some pictures from our third annual design day at the Pearl here in the Dogpatch neighborhood. We heard from behavioral scientist Pete Foley, SF MoMA Director of Marketing and Communications Jen Northrup, and filmmaker Scott Kennelly. We also got to witness powerful personal stories from some of our teammates. And this is our full research and design team. The idea of failure is really an opportunity in disguise. An instance of error is a point of data. This always growing, always learning approach can be exhibited in small ways by asking questions that are openers, such as, how might we? and what if, and help me understand. It can also be exhibited in bigger ways by how your team and larger organization give and receive and integrate feedback. What would happen if we don't take a look more at the people layer? Let's think about that. Perhaps continued job dissatisfaction, perhaps ongoing attrition, increased cost of recruitment, whether you hire someone else or do it yourself, negative impact on business or poor experiment results. What if you repeated the same mistakes you've made before because there was no history of what's worked or not? What if you were trying to invent processes that have already been tried? So instead, let's imagine what's possible. We can do our jobs better. Over time, as organizations, we'll get better and better at what we're doing. We'll have deeply purposeful, meaningful, resonant conversations about design across teams and internal alignment within teams. We'll be able to realize efficiencies at scale, easier onboarding, a clear process, a record of success. We can establish models for project teams with repeatable results. We can have decisions driven by design principles, not ego. And although this might be SF-centric, we can have people staying at their jobs for longer than 18 months. We can move more slowly and break fewer things. We can innovate without disrupting individuals. In the midst of so many frequent changes, here's what persists. Design is for people. Having a purpose, starting with why. Practicing safe design by having a concept. Things that are not traditionally aesthetic persists. Research, data, hypotheses, story. Being able to give and receive feedback from diverse people. Needing to contextualize and socialize your work. And being humble enough to collaborate and learn at all levels. Working at the people layer affords you the opportunity to hone your people skills, become a more empathic person, and a better collaborator. People skills will ground you amidst change and serve you long term. People persist more than products and companies. Once you take care of people, then you can take care of product. Thank you.
Questions? The first question is sort of about the beginning of your talk. You talked about how AIGA really inspired you and helped you build your career. Do you think that everyone should get involved in these professional organizations?
Yeah, whether it's AIGA or another one, I mean, AIGA was the first, and so it's the oldest and largest. The SF chapter, I think there's more AIGA members in California than there are in New York, even though New York was is the headquarters and was the origin of the organization. There's so many organizations that are for networks and like-minded things, like we mentioned meetups yesterday. I do like to network. As I get older, it can be a little exhausting, so making sure you have like your own personal time, Josh time, Una time. But this is a great network. Everyone should like turn to the person to your left or right if you don't know them and like introduce yourself. Like this is an amazing opportunity to socialize and network, whether it's going to be on the Slack later or in person now. Like meet people that you haven't met. I think Cameron said yesterday, like tap me on the shoulder. I'm on my phone because I don't want to be interrupted. Well, it's a great idea to like meet someone new while you're all here. So yes.
That's a good point.
Is that a yes?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like for me personally, also joining the communities around me in DC, I joined a lot of meetup groups, and I felt like I made a lot of connections that way, and I grew my ability, but also just my network. And now I've built like mentors out of the people I've just met, just because you ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can be a full-time job, or it can feel like it. But the more you do it, sometimes the easier it gets.
Yeah. Do it while you can. Don't overwhelm yourself too.
Yeah.
So you started your own company. What advice do you have for people who also want to start their own business? Because I imagine that's a lot of people in the Bay Area.
Yeah, this is where entrepreneurship happens, right? Find a good co-founder. You can't go it alone. Find somebody who either wants to help you build what you're building or has an X to your Y, like that can help augment what it is you're building and expand upon what you're building together. I made this mistake when I was 24, and I wish that I had changed how I went about it. I worked a lot. I worked evenings and weekends, and if you have a co-founder or maybe two co-founders, like knowing that you can share responsibilities and not have it all on yourself makes it a lot easier to not ignore your own needs, like, I don't know, sleep and exercise, some fundamentals. Mina's stack of pizza boxes was reminiscent of some late nights at the studio when I would just eat like Cliff Bars and a whole bag of trail mix for dinner because I was doing invoicing Wednesday nights or something like that. So sharing the responsibility is a great idea. And also, if you have always dreamed about having your own business and you haven't yet done it, my advice about that is don't wait. Start it. Like, get it going and see what you can do with it. Because if you don't do it now, you might not. And you don't want to like be 90 on your deathbed and be like, oh, I should have been self-employed.
But how do you know if your idea is solid? Like, there's so many ideas for businesses out there.
Yeah, I think if you treat it like a product, if you test it, and if you don't put like all of your resources into it, if you test your hypotheses about how you want to go about business, and then start it, and maybe like, my own path could be an example. I don't want to sound like egotistical, but like I was freelancing evenings and weekends when I had a full-time job, and then I just switched. The side became the focus, and now that I'm in-house, the focus is Twitter, and my freelance stuff is now on the side. So maybe ease into it is another good approach, not go whole hog.
So you mentioned research just briefly in there. How can smaller companies or individuals do that kind of user research?
It depends on the company, right? Maybe I don't understand the question.
Like if you had an idea for a company, or if you work in a smaller startup and you wanted to have a research department, but you can't really afford to put a lot of time into it. Do you have any advice for that?
I think that gets back to your first question about networking. Like, meet other people. General Assembly is a great resource for going to events, but they also teach a lot of the fundamentals of research, data science, design, UX, UI, visual design, and they have events. So if you want to post, like, I'm looking for a researcher on the GA job board, you can do that, and you can find somebody who can help you.
Cool. So you entered into a new role at Twitter that didn't exist before. Can you tell me a little bit about the story behind that?
Sure. The first 6 months were super challenging, but before I started, I co-wrote a draft of my job description, which was amazing. My first manager was like, I've never seen anything like this before, because I think I just like tried to summarize what his expectations were for my role, but put it in a Google Doc that he could look at. I learned a lot my first 6 months. I felt like an imposter my first 6 months. I didn't know what I was there to do. But eventually, things started to click, especially when I started doing crits this year, because it was closer to my own experience about teaching and educating and showing looking at what showed up in crits. Helping individual designers, helping the project move forward seemed like a really good match for my interests. And I love that Twitter is super diverse, super talented people work there, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I know the slide that Mina put up yesterday, like, Twitter is a wasteland. Maybe. Not on the inside.
Sometimes.
No.
Absolutely sometimes.
I mean, that's what happens when you give everyone with an email address and an @ handle a voice. Like, you're going to get some feedback that you might have to mute at some point. But on the inside, Twitter is an amazing place to work, and I'm happy to be there, and making it up as I go a little bit, but I'm having a 2018 roadmap meeting with my manager for my role next year. I'm having a 2018 roadmap for my role with my manager. I'm meeting about that next week. So I think it's good to be at this position where I'm like, I can see that far.
Yeah. So do you also get to sort of set your own metrics?
We have OKRs. Our team, smaller team has our own metrics, and then the larger product design team have metrics. We're also redesigning the tool by which we use to assess. So yes, I'm going to go with yes.
Cool. I also like how you have your own voice and ideas about what Twitter is and sort of how it's a great tool for just having a voice in this world. Do you get to sort of extend that vision into your job?
That's an interesting question. I think so. I think because Twitter is so highly entrepreneurial and we're always tinkering with new features and what you see as users and how we serve that to you, I do feel like there's a lot of that define as you go. And I think as an 11-year-old company, there are going to be some changes this year. I don't know what they are. I'm not like hiding any information, but I feel like we're coming into another level of maturity that is exciting to be a part of.
Yeah. You mentioned cross-team collaboration during the talk. I'm wondering if you have any advice on how to better foster cross-team collaboration.
Ask a lot of questions. Find out what people are working on. If you haven't met people that are in adjacent departments or different departments, like just sit in on their meetings maybe. For example, I started going to the brand shares, the weekly brand shares Thursday mornings, more out of curiosity than anything else. And within a few weeks, people were turning to me and saying like, what does product think of this? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'll find out. Like, I'll get the right people in the room. And now there's a little bit more of a bridge between brand and product. It's not because I needed to do that work. It was because I was curious. And that curiosity has fostered more of a relationship between brand and product, at least from how I think about it. And there's a lot more work to do. It's not 100% on my shoulders. So ask questions, be curious, drop in on meetings. If you're a VP and you're like Cap and you have all of your stuff marked as busy, then you're not really sure what meetings to drop in on. But you can find out. You can ask enough questions.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned pairing and mentoring as part of the ways to improve your people skills and happiness in your company.
Yes.
So what are some qualities of an effective mentorship program? And also, how can a company start to implement one?
Great question. Ashley, who's here, is running that. She should talk about it. Hi. From my experience, being a mentor at Twitter has been great because I was paired with a really fantastic, incredibly thoughtful designer who I really enjoyed hearing how he approached any one of his mocks, or even like the slightest thing that he would bring to crit. A good program, I think, is thinking about those matchmakings and thinking about either the dynamics between two people or the contrasts or comparisons between two people. And I think it would have a short cadence, like maybe 3 months or 4 months. If you want to go longer, you could do it in bigger chunks. But I feel like regularity is one of the keys. So dynamics between people, regularity, having the time to do it. It takes a lot of time to like think about the matchmaking and then set up regular meetings between you and your mentee or mentor. What else? Those are good starts. Yeah, celebrating it. Oh, visibility.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of like end of mentorship get together. What have you learned? A little retro. What have you thought? What would you bring to your next mentoring program? And consistency, like having that program grow every year.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good idea to then do sort of a reevaluation of that program and kind of a retro?
Always, yeah.
Cool. Those are all the questions that I have for you. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. Thank you.